Coming up on the show, Marta is under fire after its CEO suddenly is forced to step down. We're going to talk to City Council President Doug Shipman about what really happened and find out what's next for the agency. Also, immigration enforcement is surging across Georgia with a dramatic increase on non-criminal arrests. We're going to talk with a local nonprofit that is handling the human toll and legal concerns. And they're destructive, elusive, and multiplying fast. We're going to break down new research on how wild pigs are becoming a multi-million-dollar headache for farmers. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and we look at the why and how stories are impacting you and your community. We invite the experts in to share their takes on today's top stories, and we try to have just a little bit of fun as well. Now, we're catching a little bit of a break from the heat today thanks to the cloud cover that we have overhead. Mostly cloudy skies on the outside. We'll get some rain in here as well. Temperature is still going to be hot, but not as hot as we have been. But we will be looking at some very dangerous temperatures, especially as we head into next week as well. Those temperatures are going to go right back up again. It is late July in Atlanta, so you know, yeah, the heat is here. And we still have the dog days coming our way as well. With sky-high temperatures across the metro Atlanta area, a good part of the United States, health experts are issuing urgent warnings about the dangers of extreme heat posed to older adults. Here now is Dr. Anup Sharma, and he is the Chief Medical Officer with the United Healthcare. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Doc, talk to us about why older adults are so much vulnerable to extreme heat than younger adults.
So as we age, we tend to not have as many ways to regulate our bodies. Plus, some of the medications we're taking will have a direct impact. Blood pressure medications, sometimes the diuretics, the water pills, they'll have an impact on our ability to really control our amount of volume we have in our bodies, but also our general ability to respond to heat.
Now, I remember my mother, all right, saying that, you know, she used to be outside all day, you know, working in the heat, that kind of thing. Are we seeing more heat-related cases with older patients now than we have in years past?
Absolutely, because more and more patients are, of course, wanting to be outside, but as you know, the amount of warmer days we're having year over year has increased drastically, including from a study from UCLA where 2025 is meant to be one of the hottest years ever.
Yeah, temperature's getting warmer. So what are some of the early signs or warning signs that we would see in seniors as they start to overheat?
So initially, you're going to see a lot of sweating. You're going to feel thirsty. You can also feel a little lightheaded, but you're still sweating. It's more when we stop sweating, that's when we get concerned.
Are there more chronic conditions that make heat exposure more dangerous for older adults?
Well, if you've got high blood pressure, if you are taking certain medications, yes, it makes it more dangerous for patients. But also remember, we tell patients that are on diuretics or other medications not to drink a lot, which of course during the summer months makes it worse for them.
Yeah.
And of course, heart failure is one of the other illnesses that causes us to say that, but dire consequences otherwise.
So you mentioned those other illnesses associated with the heat. Does it have an effect on some of the medications as well?
Yeah, well, the fact that normally we're giving a water pill to make sure we have a certain amount of volume going to the heart, which doesn't make it work so hard. Now imagine in the summer months where now the patient is adhering to our guidelines, but now they're losing more water in the heat. So now they technically need it, but they're hesitant. So that'll have a drastic impact on them and causing more challenges that cause them to wind up in the hospital or other places.
Yeah. What's your advice to caregivers or neighbors who need to check in on our elderly neighbors?
Make sure that they've got the resources they need, help them pick up their medications so they're avoiding the worst times to be outside between 10 and 4. Also, if there are any cooling areas for them, like a community center or even from like the mall, you can also utilize that, but just frequent checks on them. That's the winning opportunity.
What if they don't have air conditioning? They only have a fan in the house. Did we just move them out, try to get them to one of those shelters?
Absolutely. Transportation is, of course, always challenging, and if you're able to assist with that, that's always the best way. But making sure that if they don't have that, if there's another opportunity for them to go, because many communities do provide those services.
How much more proactive should we be during heat waves when we know they're coming?
When they're coming, make sure our groceries are stocked, we've got our medications, and also to make sure that someone's checking on us. It's, a little bit, it goes a long way that way.
Yeah, we talked about the elderly. Obviously, we need to be paying close attention to our young people as well. Maybe not as susceptible to some of those conditions, but certainly vulnerable, right?
Absolutely. Sometimes we become the, weekend warriors where we're just working out so much or don't think it's going to bother us. So there's always the opportunity to, one, protect our skin, make sure we stay hydrated, and water is your friend. Uh, we don't always need Gatorade or other other waters with salt or other things in it. So, and of course, shade. Protect yourself during those times with hats also.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate your insight on this. I mean, especially when you have the mentality like my mom, we played outside all day, so that just kind of forces you to go outside even
Right.
more. But, even shades, I understand that putting on shades also protects your eyes in the longer run, where we didn't have that when I was young at least. But doing that, is there any other thing that you can take necessary precautions to protect yourself, body as a whole?
Well, of course, there's sunscreen on your face and your ears, nose. And to your great point about shades, sunglasses, of course, because, sunlight and strong sunlight at times as we age can eventually lead to cataracts also. So that was a great point from you.
Yep.
Thank you for that again.
Been in weather for a long time, Dr. Sherman. You know how it goes. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate your insight.
Thank you. You have a great day.
All right. We will get some protection from the sun today. We will have the clouds out there, but remember, UV rays shine right through some of those clouds out there, so you may still need to sunscreen up if you're going to be out by the pool. And if you're doing that, make sure you check on the forecast, because we'll have some thunderstorms in the forecast area as we head through the afternoon. Today it's a 30% chance. Not everyone gets wet. We'll do it again tomorrow with temperatures right near 90 degrees. It's a slow warm up, folks. We're going back up the thermometer. 93 degrees on Saturday, Sunday 95. Only a 20% chance for an isolated shower, and we'll hold on to that trend as we start next week. There could be some heat advisories issued when we talk about Monday, Tuesday, even into Wednesday, Thursday of next week. Those temperatures are forecast to be even hotter, maybe closer to 99 for an afternoon high. Boy, oh boy. Don't go anywhere. NBC's Alice Barr is going to join us after the break with the latest on Capitol Hill. Welcome back to the show. President Trump is working to distance himself from the uproar over the Jeffrey Epstein case, and his Justice Department is seeking an interview with a top Epstein accomplice. Joining us now is NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr. Alice, if that interview happens, what kind of evidence or names could realistically come out of this?
Yeah, Chesley, it's not clear. I mean, we do know that Ghislaine Maxwell, had the opportunity to testify in her own defense back when she was sentenced to this 20-year prison sentence for sex trafficking down in Florida, and she did not choose to testify at that point. She has said through her attorneys that she doesn't have new information to reveal. And so a lot of people, a lot of Democrats specifically, are raising concerns about whether going in and speaking to her now could incentivize her to say something, even if she has said in the past that she doesn't have new information, because she's appealing that 20-year ruling, and she may want some kind of leniency, would assume she'd want some kind of leniency in exchange for speaking and sharing potentially anything that maybe she's been holding back. She's saying she doesn't have more information, but if she does, and she decides she wants to bring that out, then she's going to want something in return. We heard also from some Republicans. Jim Comer, one of the leading House Republicans, said he doesn't think that she should get any kind of a deal, any kind of a plea deal in exchange for any testimony. So there's controversy just about going in there, having this discussion. This is something that never happens really, to have a member of an administration go and speak to somebody who is in jail and, kind of try to dig up more information at this stage. If there's more to be had, then I think a lot of people want to hear that. But there are questions about, the mechanism for trying to get to that information.
Yeah. President Trump says he's not directly involved in this, but he supports the move. What do you make of his attempts to be transparent and calling this a witch hunt?
Yeah, I mean, he's walking a tricky line here, because it's his Department of Justice, his Attorney General, who came out and said nothing more to see here, that in fact there is no incriminating client list. There is no evidence to suggest that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered in jail, that he died by suicide in his jail cell. And so he has that, from his own DOJ. And yet he has from many members of his base who have been, promoting these conspiracy theories for a long time, very deep dissatisfaction because President Trump, members of the administration now, in fact, the number one and number two at the FBI had been some of the loudest voices saying we have to release the full Epstein files. So he, is stuck a little bit with what his officials at the Justice Department are telling him, and with what his base is asking for, and I think he's trying to please both sides.
Got it. Yeah, Congress is about to go into recess, right? And now it sounds like some folks on Capitol Hill are trying to play the beat the clock game with this Epstein case, right?
Yeah. So what we're seeing today is that the House Speaker is sending his House members home early for their summer break. And that's delaying votes being demanded by Democrats and also some Republicans calling for the release of the full files on Jeffrey Epstein. And so the fact that they're leaving means that this vote will not come up before what is a 5-week break. And House Speaker Johnson is hoping that during that time, this is all going to die down, because he has said repeatedly that while he is for maximum transparency, he doesn't want to force the hand of the Trump administration, who he believes is doing what it can to try to satisfy these concerns. He's hoping that over this 5-week period that this will die down, and then the calls for that vote will go away, while like Republican Thomas Massie, who's been leading this effort to force a vote on the floor, he's betting that lawmakers are going to go home and they're going to hear from their constituents, who very clearly, very many of them in both parties, want this information made public, and that when they come back, they're going to maybe have more leverage rather than less, and more time for the mechanism of bringing that vote forward to still make this happen.
Got it. Alice Barr, thanks so much for joining us today. All right, take care. All right, we got plenty more stories for you coming up. This is The Take. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the show. He's led the National Institutes of Health during the most pivotal years, and now Dr. Zerhouni is sounding the alarm, and it's all in his new book titled Disease Knows No Politics. And Dr. Zerhouni, Elias Zerhouni, is joining us now live on the show. Dr. Zerhouni, so glad you are with us today.
Thank you for having me, Jesse.
Yeah, you've held roles in academia, government, global industry. What finally led you to write this book now?
I'll tell you what, I've been involved in healthcare and medical research for 50 years, from 1975 to today. And in 1975, when I came to Johns Hopkins University, I thought the healthcare system here was the best in the world. Today, I cannot say that. It's one of the most expensive systems, and it's not performing according to standards. And so I'm recounting my journey from best to not so good, and why it changed over time through my own lens, through the lens of my own experience in academia, and then government as director of the NIH, and then industry as well. So that's the story of why I wanted to write this memoir, to tell people disease will hit you no matter what party you're in. It doesn't discriminate against you because you're a Democrat or a Republican. And I want to send that message and show how, in fact, politics can deviate from best outcomes for the American people.
Yeah, you mentioned the ups and downs. You've been leading for a long time here during the times of war, stem cell controversy, funding shifts. How do you lead science when the political winds are blowing in every direction?
Right now it's a challenge, because there's almost like a distrust of science that has gone up in the public, and then the government is using science as a weapon to make universities heal. And so, for example, terminating cancer research grants, which makes no sense, because cancer is still here and it will still hurt a lot of American citizens. So stopping that is not a good thing right now. But I see hopeful signs, because this Make America Healthy Again is a good movement, because it addresses things that I personally felt needed to be addressed: nutrition, the food supply, chronic diseases, obesity, diabetes. That's good. But then on the other hand, there are other things that get injected, which are politically motivated and ideologically motivated. And that's why I think we should go back to a more balanced a system where, we should look at evidence and what it is that evidence tells us to do, and not use science as a cudgel.
Gotcha. You said in your book that truth can't thrive where it's politicized. What does that mean in the practical sense for doctors, for researchers, and even the media itself?
In terms of, I didn't hear your question. Repeat that.
Yeah, you said that in your book, the truth can't thrive where it's politicized. What does that mean from a practical sense for doctors, for researchers?
That's right, because you've seen through history, not just in America, but around the world, whenever a government directs research, basic research, it really picks and chooses topics and influences and biases the science that really is seeking the truth. That happened in Russia. For many, many years, Russia believed that evolution was not a scientific concept that should be supported. And so for 50 years, they didn't follow molecular biology. America took the lead. I mean, we were, no question, number one in biomedical research in the world today, but our situation is not as assured as it was 25 years ago. We're at risk of losing that leadership.
Yeah. If you were back right now running the NIH during the post-COVID political fractured years, a moment in history, what would your top priority be?
I think the priorities of the current administration are not bad in terms of chronic diseases, prevention, and nutrition. That should be really enhanced. The other thing is artificial intelligence. It's going to make a huge difference in healthcare.
Yeah.
And I think we need to really invest behind it, not leave it just to big companies, and really have NIH be a leader in the applications of AI in healthcare.
All right. Dr. Zahoni, so thankful that you joined us this morning, and thank you so much for your insight.
Well, thank you. Thank
right.
you, Jesse.
Take care. Have a great day. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. Plenty more stories for you coming up. This is The Take. We'll be back right after this. Well, welcome back to the show. ICE arrests of people without criminal charges or convictions in the Peach State surged sharply during the month of June. This is seen as a broader national trend following the Trump administration's directive to triple daily arrest targets. The ICE data shows 42% of arrests in Georgia in June were non-criminal. This is up from just 14% back in January. There were 920 total ICE arrests that month, nearly 2.5 times the number of arrests made at the start of the year. This puts Georgia among the top 5 states for ICE arrest totals in the nation. Here with us now is Santiago Marquez, the Chief Executive Officer of the Latin American Association. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Yeah, what does this new data, Santiago, tell you or signal to you about how immigration is enforced and being applied here in the metro Atlanta area?
Well, we're certainly experiencing it. We're seeing it. We have families, obviously, that are coming to us for services, and they are scared. They're confused. They feel like there's chaos around their lives. And these are particularly families that are mixed status families, right? So could be that their kids are American citizens or one of the spouses is documented and the other one is not. So what we have seen is there's a lot of fear, and people are not coming to get services as much as they were before. And I think that this creates also a distrust with communities and law enforcement and government, right? And so that's what we've been experiencing over the last couple of months.
Yeah. Explain to us the difference between a criminal arrest and civil immigration violation.
Well, I'm not an attorney, but you probably need a lawyer to explain that one a little bit better. But what we do know is that we serve a lot of people and seen a lot of people that have been here for 15, 20 years that are undocumented. Immigration law is complicated. There's a lot to it. It depends on, what country you came from and how you got here and what kind of relationship that country has with the United States. So there's a lot to it. It's not as easy as, why don't you go and fix your papers and become legal? So I will say that there's a lot of complexities to that. We also know that there's a lot of people that we're working with that have been here for 15 or 20 years that have been working, taking care of their families, living in the underground kind of economy. And those are the families that could really be hurt because they have kids that are born here. And those kids are depending on that parent to bring home the money, right? So separating the families could be something that's really devastating, I think, to everybody, not just those families, but everybody will suffer from that, in my opinion.
Yeah. Why do you think our state, specifically here in Metro Atlanta, has become such a hotbed for enforcement?
I really don't know, and I've been asking that question. It's I have no answer for that. I have never gotten a good explanation on that. I
Mm.
think that there was something that I had heard where they were going after big cities. It could be that our industries here in Georgia, construction, agriculture, hospitality are thriving industries, and they tend to attract a lot of immigrants. And in some cases, you have immigrants that are not documented working in those industries, but I really don't have an answer to that.
Yeah. What kind of calls are your organization getting right now? What kind of calls are coming in?
Well, so we have immigration lawyers, obviously, that are, that have been serving the community for 25 years. And so a lot of those calls that they're getting is just questions around their own status, right? People that were in transition, working on their paperwork, people that might have had temporary protective status that's been eliminated recently. So I think there's a lot of confusion there. And then with our social workers, we provide services to everybody, not just Latinos, but anybody who walks through our doors. And that's basic services like food and housing and shelter and clothing. They're getting a lot of calls around, one of the maybe the breadwinner has been deported. What kind of help can they get for their kids and their families? And so, or just a lot of questions around, what happens if, somebody gets deported in our family? What do we do? Or if two parents get deported and the kids are American citizens, what happens to those kids? Who's going to take care of them?
Yeah, gotcha. All right, Santiago Marquez, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for your insight today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Always good to talk to you.
All right. You're watching The Take, folks. Don't go anywhere. We're back right after this. Last week, Marta's board of directors announced it would be parting ways with the CEO and general manager, Collie Greenwood, at a time when the board cited immigration and personal matters as the reason for departure. However, Marta explained that Greenwood, a Canadian national, had a work permit, but that it had expired 1 month earlier. With his green card pending, but undelivered, he officially stopped working for Marta and delegated his duties within the agency. This meant that Marta was without a CEO at a time when major events took over Metro Atlanta, including the Peachtree Road Race, Club World Cup, we're talking about the World Cup, Beyonce concerts, and Major League Baseball All-Star Game. Here now with us to talk more about this controversy is Atlanta City Council President Doug Shipman. Councilman Shipman, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Now, how concerned are you that the head of Atlanta's transit system was essentially out of commission for a month without the public being told?
Well, it's certainly a concern. MARTA is a very complicated agency. There are a lot of things happening this summer, as there is every summer in Atlanta. And to not be without a leader who's able to function in the role and not to let the public know, that is a concern. I think more broadly also, MARTA has been struggling to deliver daily service, to deliver projects, and so not having a leader, is just another concern that I have with MARTA overall.
Yeah. How did you guys find out about the matter?
We found out along with everybody else when the board announcement was made following his retirement. That's when we found out about it as well.
Wow. How would you describe the relationship between City Council or City Hall and Marta now?
So I think that there have been a lot of questions over time. There's been an audit that the city called for that showed that MARTA wasn't spending money in the ways that we thought that it should. We've obviously been frustrated with the lack of delivery of projects that have been on the books for several years. So I think that there is a working relationship, but it's strained. I actually hope that this presents an opportunity to bring in a new leader that really understands that MARTA needs some significant changes, really needs a turnaround at this point. And so I think this is an opportunity, if the board is willing to take it, to really set a new direction for MARTA.
So you're hoping that this departure is a reset?
I do hope it's a reset. I think that we've seen MARTA struggle with the Peachtree Road Race, delivering folks on time. Obviously, the Shakira concert the Beyonce concert a couple of weeks ago, the Shakira concert a few months ago, last year with the Pride Parade. Every day there are riders, hundreds of thousands of riders that depend on MARTA to move where they need to be. And unfortunately, MARTA buses don't show up as often as they should. The stations don't look the way that they should. So I hope the new leader really takes a change agenda and says, hey, there are a lot of things we need to improve. And that I and council and a lot of us are willing to help make those changes happen.
Speaking of which, if you had a chance to kind of shape the position, the job for the next CEO, what qualities would you look for and what would you put as priorities at the top of the list?
Yeah, I think number one is somebody who can build a strong team. I think Marta needs a team that knows how to deliver projects, that knows how to do development around its stations. So someone who can bring in other talented people to the organization. Two, somebody who has turned around organizations, big ones, somebody who knows how to do that. Three, I think some transit knowledge is important, especially around funding, but I don't think they have to be a transit person. I don't think they have to have grown up in the business of public transportation. I think it's more important that someone really understands how to run a complex organization and to recruit a team and has an attitude that they're willing to really tackle and be honest about the challenges that Marta faces.
Yeah. Do you think the board should consider somebody that's kind of local, Atlanta-rooted kind of a leader next time?
I think it can be someone who's from here, or I think it can be someone who's national. I'm not sure that attribute, whether they're from here or not, really matters all of that much. I think it's more the disposition that they have a track record, that they've shown that they've been able to tackle these kinds of things. I think what we need is status quo. I think we don't need somebody who comes in and says, hey, everything's great and I'm just going to keep the trains running. I think we need somebody who says, no, we really need to make significant improvements and is excited about tackling that challenge.
How would they build up public trust again? How would they do that?
Well, I think first and foremost, you have to be open about the struggles. You have to be open about the challenges. Had Marta come out and said, hey, we're having an immigration documents issue with Mr. Greenwood, I think everybody would understand that. We see a lot of the chaos that the Trump administration is wreaking when it comes to immigration. Everybody would have understood that wasn't necessarily Mr. Greenwood's doing or Marta's doing. But by not telling folks, by not admitting to fundamental challenges the organization's had, that's what really drives public mistrust. So I think an openness to the challenges and openness to information is the first step in rebuilding the public trust. And then second, I think it's just delivering daily service. If a bus says it's going to show up at this time, it shows up on time. If we say we're going to serve folks that are going to a concert, that we have enough trains to serve them so they're not waiting 30 minutes on the platform. I think the basic delivery is the second piece of rebuilding public trust.
All right. Atlanta City Council President Doug Shipman, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Take a look outside, folks. It's dreary, to say the least. We got the clouds in place, and those clouds will hold on for much of the afternoon. In fact, we're expecting to see a few scattered showers come out of those clouds, especially as we get closer to the 11 o'clock noon hour. Maybe a couple thunderstorms embedded in those. Not anticipating any severe weather to be around, but we will be seeing a few heavy raindrops around the area as a result of some of those thunderstorms. It's going to help to keep our temperature down just a little bit here. Instead of looking at temperatures in the 90s today, will only be around or at least near 90 for the afternoon high temperature for today.
I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
All right, Dr. Martin Luther King said those words the night before he stood on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, and lost his life as a result of an assassin's bullet. Since that April night in 1968, speculation has remained over many facets of Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination. Now, this week, President Trump ordered the release of the records from the FBI surveillance of Dr. Martin Luther King. And here now with us is Gerald Griggs. He's the president of the Georgia NAACP. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, you put out on social media saying justice requires transparency. Healing requires truth. Where does the release of these files fit into that?
I think we should have followed the wishes of the family and not released these files. We didn't learn anything new, and we re-traumatized the family. So transparency means being honest and open in the conversation about how the release would have been facilitated. So we want to continue to support the voice of the family. I don't believe that the release of this information moved any needle forward in the unfortunate timely unpassing of Dr. King.
Yeah. How does that look like, the releasing in your eyes? How would that have looked?
It would have looked like you would have gone over the documents with the family, and you would have had the family's approval of the release of this information. And again, it was no additional information that was not already known to the public. So I'm not sure, other than trying to have a political sideshow, why this was released at this time.
Yeah. In your mind, what has been left unanswered about Dr. King's assassination?
Nothing. We knew all of this information before. We knew that there was a lone gunman, and there was some question about whether or not he worked alone. These documents did not answer that ultimate question, and it just provided more traumatic experience for the family.
Yeah. Do you trust the government truly is being transparent about this, or does this just reopen a deeper distrust that's been there since 1968?
It reopens deeper distrust. We saw the intense surveillance of Dr. King that was documented by the government. So you can't trust the government to be transparent in what the government was doing to surveil Dr. King. So I think this added more distrust in the process of the release of these documents.
Is there any way that the family can be protected with this, or from being traumatized by this release? Or I mean, I'm not sure if you read what's in it, but is there any way to protect the family at this point?
I mean, you could have had a conversation with them beforehand to prepare them for what was in the documents. Again, they're the ones to best assess whether or not those steps are appropriate, and they have said that in this particular case, they were not.
You mentioned that you believe that there's nothing left to be uncovered. Do you think that there's anything in these files that could reveal anything at all?
No, not that we don't already know. I mean, many of the individuals that were around that particular incident have written profusely on what happened. And I think it's been documented in multiple biographies. And now these documents just add validity to what was already given by eyewitnesses.
Why now, do you think? I mean, they said they had a date before. Now they're saying an early release. Why now, do you think?
To draw attention away from the files that the country are really waiting on. That's the Epstein files. So I think it was a smokescreen to distract. And I think ultimately it caused more pain than it did progress or information.
Yeah, Gerald Griggs, so thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for your insight on this. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about it, and certainly we'll invite you back as we get more word about what's in these files and get your take on it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, no problem. All right, could the U.S. and Japan be making a trade deal? We'll find out after the break. Overnight, details emerged about a new trade deal in place between the United States and Japan. CNN's Maribel Aber joins us now from the NASDAQ market site in New York. Good morning to you, Maribel. And the threatened tariff dropped to 15%. What led to this agreement?
Hey, good morning, Chesley. Well, first off, that August 1st deadline for tariffs to kick in has been sort of looming large, and now there's another trade deal that has been struck. President Trump says the U.S. and Japan have reached a trade agreement. Trump said the agreement calls for 15% tariffs on Japan's exports to the U.S., and tariffs on Japanese autos will be lowered to 15% from the current 25% level. The deal also calls for Japan to invest $550 billion in the U.S. Trump said the U.S. will receive 90% of the profits from those investments. And late last night, Trump said a trade deal with the European Union could come today. Chesley.
All right. GM says new tariffs on imported cars and auto parts took a big bite out of their bottom line. Tell us about that.
It was a big hit, Chesley, last quarter for General Motors. GM says tariffs took a $1.1 billion bite out of its bottom line. So the hit to the automakers' profits come from tariffs on imported cars and auto parts. GM, for the most part, has held prices steady despite the tariffs, but the automaker hasn't ruled out raising prices. So far, GM has absorbed the additional costs while it's been shifting some auto production to the U.S. The automaker is aiming to increase its U.S. production by 17% by 2027. Among the moves GM is making is to bring production of the gas-powered Chevrolet Blazer from a factory in Mexico to one in Tennessee. And GM is also hoping for trade deals with Mexico, Canada, and South Korea, which could provide it some relief, Chesley.
All right, Maribel, folks looking to sell their homes could be looking at a big tax break soon, made into law. This was a bill pushed by a Georgia Congresswoman, and the president seems to be keen on it.
Well, it was earlier this month, in fact, that Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced that bill that you're talking about that would repeal the capital gains tax on principal residences. And now President Trump says his administration is looking at removing capital gains taxes on home sales. The move would be an effort to boost the housing market, which has stalled amid higher mortgage rates. Now, presently, someone selling a principal residence can exclude up to $250,000 of profits from capital gains taxes. Married couples can exclude as much as $500,000 from the taxes. Congress set those levels 28 years ago, and removing the taxes would require an act of Congress. Chesley, it's good news in hot markets where home prices have doubled or more, but let's not put the cart before the horse. Congress still needs to act.
Yeah. All right. Looks like people who have a sweet tooth like me need a bigger budget. Sounds like even chocolate may be experiencing inflation.
Yeah. Well, absorbing higher cocoa prices, Hershey is now raising some of candy prices due to those higher costs. The increases will vary, Chesley, generally be between the low teens and 20%. Hershey says the price hikes are due to the continued high cost of cocoa. Now, the majority of cocoa comes from West Africa. Crops there have been hit hard with poor weather, plant disease. It's an area that supplies roughly 70% of the world's cocoa beans. After soaring late last year, cocoa prices have fallen. They're still 70% higher than they were 5 years ago. Chocolate candy makes up 67% of Hershey's sales. That's according to a recent analysis by Wall Street firm TD Cowen. Chesley, here's a tip for you, okay? Hershey's has a bulk deal. 5 share-size bags, $25. This is $5 a bag. That's like less than what you pay at the grocery store. You can get it online, in-store, no coupon needed. You need shop Hershey's.com/sales offers. And you get 5 of these. Share with your friends.
Yeah, two things I noticed. A, you have a bag of kisses right there, and it's open.
I do. It is. It is. It is open. Hey, look, I'm willing to share, okay? All right?
I can't catch very well. Obviously, I dropped mine. Thanks a lot, Maribel. I really appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, take care. All right, coming up on the show, we're going to talk about what impact wild pigs are having on our environment right here in Georgia. You want to stay tuned for this. Well, it's a growing and costly invasion. Wild pigs are tearing through Georgia's farmland, and the price tag is adding up fast. Now, a new study out of UGA shows just how much damage these animals are causing, not just to crops, but also to our entire ecosystem. Here now with us is Justine Smith. She's a UGA doctoral candidate and lead author on this study. Justine, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Justine, what made you, what drew you to this particular study in the first place?
I figured that was going to be asked, and I think it's always a good one. Honestly, I started this project with camera trapping with wild pigs, and my project is a collaborative effort between the University of Georgia, the Jones Center at Itchaway, the Flint River Soil and Water Conservation District, and USDA APHIS Wildlife Services. Now, that's a lot of entities together, but ultimately what started this is the Jones Center had a drone, and they said if I wanted to use it, I absolutely could. And UGA was offering a course, introduction to remote sensing, drone flights, introduction to the Part 107 and how to get that certification. And I decided to take it. And working on these properties with farming, I was incredibly motivated to try to quantify this damage. And I was given the supplies, I was taught, and a lot of trust, and I was able to go out and fly these fields and assess this damage.
Was there a movement or something that alerted you to the problem?
So wild pigs has been a growing problem in the U.S. for quite some time, and so my project was actually funded from the pilot program, which was provided by the 2018 Farm Bill grant. Mm-hmm. So it's a congressional thing ultimately, and so there were 20 pilot program studies that started in about 2020, and I was one of them, and that started the shift into researching wild pigs in general. A lot of this did camera trapping, while Wildlife Services conducted on-site removals, and then we were also able to branch out. So in Georgia, I was the only pilot program. There was also one on the Florida-South Georgia border, and there are also other pilot program studies down in the Southeast too, and some others have also explored using drones to assess damage in their respective states.
Is that where the problem exists? Is it more wild pigs in the southeastern portion of the state or some other portion of the state? And what are the problems that they're causing?
Okay, good question. So ultimately, as of last year, if I'm remembering this map correctly, wild pigs have been reported in 29 states in the U.S., and most of those states are congregated in the Southeast. Wild pigs were initially introduced in the Southeast in around the 1500s by Spanish explorers, and ultimately the population had slowly expanded over time. And because they're an invasive, the damages associated with them and the lack of natural predators, they have a generalist diet, and their high capacity to reproduce is just kind of added into this problem. And so, yes, there's a lot of them in the Southeast in general. And so it has just become an increasing problem. And I'm very thankful that there's more attention coming to it.
Yeah. What type of problem are they causing?
Oh, right, sorry.
That's okay.
So most of their damage is associated with their rooting behavior. Their rooting behavior, they take their noses and they dig up in the ground. And especially with this study, they will go in and root up the seeds that farmers unfortunately just planted, ultimately causing damage and the lack of production, which then leads to the monetary loss.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything that surprised you about your findings with the amount of damage that they're causing?
For my findings, truthfully, I was the monetary value, always putting things into perspective is shocking in itself. But ultimately, I think this study brings to light the fact that wild pigs have been a problem, will be a problem, and are going to be an ongoing problem. And so it needs to be a collaborative effort continuing forward. You need to work with your neighbors. You need to work with your agencies and things like that to really help mitigate this issue. And so I think just putting the numbers into perspective is what was the most shocking part for me.
Gotcha. Now, is this a problem where they're growing too fast, too soon? Could we see them in the metro area?
I don't think so. In that distribution map that I was talking about beforehand, in Georgia in particular, it's on the county level. Wild pigs have been reported in every county, but I cannot see them in the grand sense, being in the metro area for a long period of time. I'm sure it was simply passing, as they are more apt to be in a wild setting.
Yeah. Let's hope not. Let's hope not. What's next for your research?
So I am actually finishing up my dissertation. I should be graduating this fall. I looked at some wild big bait preference, and I also looked into their fear response to auditory playback devices, just to see if there are other ways that we can help mitigate this damage, push them elsewhere, things like that. Because managing wild pigs and removing them is always, it's not just like a one size fits all for removal methods. It's a bunch of efforts used together. So if there's a way that we could potentially dissuade them by a certain sound or something like that, I was hoping to find that out.
Yeah. All right, Justine Smith, doctoral candidate at UGA. Congratulations on your research, and best of wishes to you on your projects going forward.
Thank you.
All right, take care now. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. We'll have another check on your forecast, plus my final take when we return. Not as hot today. Temperatures right around 89 degrees for an afternoon high. We got the clouds in place, rain just off to the east of us. We'll continue to push into the area. A couple thunderstorms could be around this afternoon as well. Should be out of the way, though, by the time we get toward the evening, like 6, 7 o'clock, should be over with. Then we'll do it again for tomorrow. Each and every afternoon, scattered showers will be around. Temperatures will be going up, though, as we head through the weekend and into next week. 95 by Sunday, Monday and Tuesday, 96, and could be even hotter as we get into the middle of next week. And again, each and every afternoon, the threat for an isolated shower or a thunderstorm. All right, now, before we go to my final take, would you call this another brilliant idea or just a flash in the pan? Elon Musk opened up his first Tesla diner in Hollywood this week. The restaurant boasts the diner-style food, drive-in-style movies, 80 superchargers in the parking lot. The Tesla diner described as a 2-story retro modern steel-covered restaurant where a parade of cyber trucks and Teslas lined up the first day just to get in. It was marked the popular but controversial car company's first foray into the restaurant business, and with hundreds, if not 1,000 people lining up to get in on its first day, it seemed like it could be somewhat of a success. So because of that, Elon Musk is saying the LA Tesla diner will be the first of many around the entire United States. Sounds like it could be the new Buc-ee's for electric cars. Let's just hope the bathrooms live up to it. I would love to know what you think about this. On our social media pages, just hit us up. Let us know what you think. Is this going to be a hit, or is this something that's just going to go away? Maybe with EVs. Who knows? That's all we got for you today, folks. Make it a great one. Try to encourage someone to maybe hit the new EV Buc-ee's by Elon Musk. Have a great day.